But by the way, if we're following the logic here, and why not? That's in short supply in this country. You have to kind of wonder, like, what's the limit to this? So if trans people are in fear for their lives in every region in the country, including New England, which apparently is crawling with Nazis now, why wouldn't we be arming them as we are, say, Ukraine's trans army? And there are famously trans people in Ukraine's army. They're very, very proud of that. So why stop with AR-15s? I mean, why not F-35s or tanks? You know, that's a question for our highest-ranking trans admiral, Richard Levine. Here is Richard Levine in July of 2020 describing the threat.
The most vulnerable among us continue to suffer, including LGBTQ individuals of color, LGBTQ youth, LGBTQ seniors, and LGBTQ immigrants.
So none of that is factually true, as we just told you. In fact, some of the people he's describing are not the most oppressed in our society, but literally and measurably the most entitled and privileged. The Biden administration hired a kid to oversee nuclear waste disposal whose only qualification was his sexual fetishes. So no, there's not genocide going on. There's some weird affirmative action program going on. But if you listen to NPR, you wouldn't know that. And that kind of talk might scare the heck out of you. And if they encourage you to go get a gun and arm yourself because Nazis are taking over Vermont, you might do it. Again, we're as for guns as you could possibly be. But this seems like an incitement. Jason Rantz is our man in the Pacific Northwest. and by the way, the man who filled in the blanks in that incredibly misleading NPR story. We're happy to have him join us now. Jason, thanks so much for coming on. It does seem, and again, I say this as someone who's about as passionate about the Second Amendment as you can be in a multiple gun owner, but this does seem like they're trying to whip people into an unjustified frenzy and then tell them to buy guns. That's not reassuring, I don't think.
It's not, but I mean, part of me wonders why we didn't just all decide to change our first names and identities to a different gender. We've got 17,000 of them to actually pick from so that we could actually be celebrated as gun owners or Second Amendment enthusiasts. So I'm coming out now. My name is Jacinda. I'm a sapiosexual, non-binary Second Amendment enthusiast. And now I should be celebrated. But you're right, of course. The reason why they're doing this is that it fits into the narrative of oppressor versus oppressed. So you have one group that is marginalized. You have the other group that is causing all of the anger and angst and the threat. And all of a sudden, you've got the transgender community, which I'm assuming Democrats probably didn't want to inspire to get armed. But now that's exactly what they're doing to protect themselves against a threat that the Democrat Party created, a threat that doesn't actually exist. But ironically, the good news is the transgender community, anyone else who responsibly owns guns, you're going to get to protect yourself from the criminals that the Democrat Party has enabled. It's not white supremacists. It's the criminals that aren't actually going to jail because of policies.
Well, that's a really fair and good point, I think. As a factual matter, the risk you run is not from political violence from the right. It's from armed robbers and opportunists who will grab you on the way to the grocery store. And so maybe there's an upside. I just hate to see the Second Amendment politicized, gun ownership politicized, any fundamental right politicized. But maybe you're right. We benefit.
Yeah, we do benefit. And look, at the end of the day, every single right always gets politicized. We're talking about politicians. You've got one side that actually stands up for the Second Amendment, and you've got the other side that's trying to convince us to get rid of it or at least ignore the laws that pretend the Second Amendment doesn't exist. And so in a lot of ways, it is just inevitable. Again, I'm kind of with you. I'm glad that there are more people who are saying to themselves, okay, this might be the right thing for me. I'm actually going to get trained. I'm going to be responsible. And if they're armed to protect themselves against a threat that doesn't exist, well, there's no harm that can come of that. The only harm that can come is when an actual threat that you're told doesn't exist, but actually exists, like the threat that the left has created, you're now actually prepared. And maybe this changes minds across the board.
Look, I mean, it's certainly changed mine. I now see gun control correctly, I think, as anti-trans hate. And hate has no place in this House. And I'm just going to be clear about that with you, Jason Rantz. I hope you agree with me.
No, I really appreciate that. And thank you for seeing me and acknowledging me and my gender identity and my right to bear arms. I do appreciate that.
You're the best. Jason Rantz, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Good to see you. Appreciate it.